Peru is the third largest country in South America. It is bordered on the north by Ecuador and Colombia, on the east by Brazil and Bolivia, and on the south by Chile. The driest desert in the world runs the length of its coast. The vast range of the Andes, with towering mountains and many glaciers, occupy the middle of the country. And to the east is the rainforest. The Amazon River begins its journey high in the glaciers of the Andes and runs for 4,000 miles until it empties in the Atlantic Ocean. The population of Peru is about 24 million. About 45% of the people are Indians. Spanish and Quechua, spoken by the Indians, are the official languages. 90% of the people are Catholic. The per capita income is $4,300. The capital of Peru is Lima, a city of 8 million. Peru gained its independence in 1821 from Spain and has gone from dictatorships to democracy and endured terrorism from the Shining Path, an organization which still exists in the jungles but who have no power because their leader is in prison. Our hotel in Lima was the Jose Antonio. It was a Spanish conquistador who founded the city in 1535. The Spanish learned of all the gold and silver in Peru, conquered the natives in the 1500s, converted the pagans to Catholicism, but ran a brutal regime. Well, the Spanish did find the gold and silver artifacts and melded them into ingots and shipped them off to Spain, so there is not much left of that. The Spanish influence can be seen in the architecture of the buildings, as shown by the carved Spanish balconies. Today, Lima is a vibrant city of rich and poor, with many churches. This is the presidential palace. Although they have a small minority of Asians, Alberto Fujimori, a Japanese, is a past president. While he was in office, a band of guerrillas in 1996 seized the Japanese embassy and held foreign diplomats hostage for some 146 days. What would a palace be without guards, who are more for show than for protection? On an adjoining street is the Lima Cathedral, which has been reconstructed many times over the years because of earthquake damage. Many structures in Peru have been painted a yellow ochre to brighten up the dusty facades. To the left of the cathedral, and not to be outdone by the president, is the Archbishop of Lima's palace. However, we were told the prelate was too embarrassed to live there among so many poor people. I don't know what it says about this place, but I couldn't resist taking a picture of the pigeon sitting on top of the Archbishop's head. Lima is on the Pacific Ocean, and the Spanish debarked from their ships along this coast in 1532. They had guns, which the natives did not, and rode in on horseback. The natives had never seen a horse nor a cannon, so they were very easy to conquer. This is a small part of a beautiful strip park, which runs for miles along the shore. And, of course, a shopping center where all sorts of goods can be purchased, as well as Kentucky Fried Chicken and Dunkin' Donuts. No matter where you go, you never get away from the U.S. We visited the monastery of San Francisco. It has been here since the 1500s. It is renowned because of the catacombs where the bones of thousands of people lie in underground chambers. We walked through the catacombs. I took pictures of the bones, but they didn't materialize when the film was developed. We never saw any monks, nor did we get to see the inside of the church, but we saw their beautiful courtyard. Inside the monastery was a room decorated with all sorts of gold pieces. While the Spaniards melted down all the gold of the pagan Incas, they had no problem with using gold in the Catholic churches. This 17th century library at the monastery contains 25,000 bound volumes and 6,000 parchments, dating from the 15th to the 18th century. Almost everywhere we went, there were Indian women dressed in their finest and willing to pose for a picture, for a price usually about 50 cents. The Peruvians excel in painting, weaving, and music, and all their clothing is very colorful. It is only an hour plane ride to Cusco, which is almost 11,000 feet above sea level. The city is surrounded by the Andes. It was the ancient capital of the Inca Empire. Today, over 1 million people live there. The airport is in the middle of the city. The white stripe in the center of the picture is the airport runway. Most of the houses have either a thatched or red-tiled roof. The climate is dry, but it does get quite cold in the winter. Interestingly enough, there are no chimneys on the roofs. We were told they have no indoor heat, which is why they wear wool clothing and large wool shawls. The walls of the houses are made of mud bricks, and stacks of these are everywhere throughout the countryside. Sorry, this out-of-focus picture shows stacks of these bricks being lifted one by one into a warehouse. Needless to say, there is a lot of manual labor. It is very common to see small figures of bulls on the roofs of houses. Peruvians believe they bring good luck. Cusco has a fair number of automobiles, most of which are, guess, Japanese. They have an extensive bus system and a number of railroads. Once again, you see the Spanish influence in the grillwork and the balconies. The Spanish occupied Peru in 1532 and ruled for the next 300 years. This is the unimpressive entrance to our hotel. Cusco is heavily dependent on tourism to maintain their economy. This is the gateway to many Inca sites and the base for many trekkers and mountain climbers. We visited a local market. Farmers bring in their produce and other edibles each day. These are round loaves of bread. The climate and soil are such that they grow a variety of fruits and vegetables. There are endless varieties of potatoes and corn. However, 40% suffer from malnutrition and poor drinking water. Typical of most poor countries, there is little or no refrigeration for these chickens. Notice the Coca-Cola bottles above the fowl. The Cathedral of Cusco has a magnificent interior, but no picture-taking is allowed. There is a most unusual painting of the Last Supper, which shows the apostles, all of whom look like Peruvians, dining on their delicacies, roast guinea pig, hot peppers, and Andean cheese. Dinner at a local restaurant was accompanied by Peruvian musicians. Two are playing zampenas, or panpipes. They come in varying sizes and are made of carved wood. They are played by blowing across the ends of the pipes. No, we did not have guinea pig for dinner. There were also a colorful group of dancers. We encountered one group in the lobby, and they displayed their affection for Americans, which wasn't too bad to take. We drove into the country and stopped to watch potatoes being picked. One of our group is trying to help. Most farmers have a few cows for milk and to slaughter, and they tether the livestock so they don't eat the vegetables. These potatoes will probably be taken to the local market and sold. In the same field, a farmer was plowing the ground with an ox and a wooden plow. Some farmers will rent a tractor. Most of the farms are small in size, and their homes are very Spartan. Most of them do not have electricity or running water. These children came to watch us. Many do not have an opportunity to attend school, and the illiteracy rate is very high. No doubt, it is a beautiful country, as this view of the Peruvian Andes shows. There is a variety of sports for tourists: mountain climbing, hiking, fishing, rafting, you name it. Our drive from Cusco took us to the sacred valley of the Incas, who thought this place to be the biblical Eden. We are looking at the Urubamba River, which flows into the Amazon, and this is the town of Urubamba. By now, we were starved, and we stopped at a restaurant for lunch. We were escorted to a small dining room with a thatched roof. People are always asking, "Well, what did you have to eat?" I will show you. The appetizer was spinach rolled in a pastry dough and some hominy. The soup was pumpkin with bits of chicken in it. The entree was a delicious piece of fish with a potato, broiled tomato, and green beans and carrots. And dessert was a piece of almond cake, chocolate cake, and something else, all very tasty. The beverage is coca tea. Coca tea is made from the leaves of the coca shrub. The tea is said to relieve a headache caused by altitude sickness. Peru grows about 60% of the world's coca crop. Chewing coca leaves has been a part of the Andean culture for 4,000 years and is one of the ingredients in Coca-Cola. Another group provided music for our lunch. The musicians merge ancient music with modern technology. They all have CDs of their music for sale. Our hotel entrance and a picture of a tricycle taxi. These vehicles are everywhere in Peru. They carry 2 people and luggage, are noisy and polluting. They are privately owned. We visited the ancient town of Ollantaytambo in the Sacred Valley. This is our first look at the Inca nation. The Incas were but one tribe of ancient Indians. They were pagans who worshipped the sun. They came into their own in the early 1400s and built many temples and fortresses to protect themselves from other tribes. Thus came into being the Inca fortress of Ollantaytambo. The light was wrong for this picture, but there are steps and terraces which rise about 11 stories up this mountain. They built this fortress to protect the Temple of the Sun they constructed on the top of the mountain. The Incas were remarkable people who understood architecture, irrigation, pottery, gold working, and healing methods. Yet they had no written language and did not know of the wheel. About 2,500 men moved giant granite boulders and rocks up the side of the mountain to construct this place. About every 20 feet or so it levels out, and here were places where they may have planted corn. This was a place of great sacred and military importance to the Incas. There were also these broad terraces where a variety of vegetables could be planted. We did climb to the top. You can see how steep and rough the steps were, which is why we were advised to wear good walking shoes. Apparently, this woman never got the message. Now this is not just a picture of a handsome couple, but also shows how the Incas cut the granite stones with very rudimentary tools to achieve an almost perfect fit. In some cases you couldn't put a knife blade between the stones. It remains a mystery how they managed to haul all those stones up the side of the mountain. At the top of the mountain is the Temple of the Sun, which was never finished. The huge boulders you see were found on the mountain in the background. The Incas moved them down that mountain and up to this one. To add a little color, there is an Indian woman in the picture. Down below is the town of Ollantaytambo, where many of the buildings and roads built by the Incas are still standing and occupied. These buildings date back to the 1500s. Note the windows. They are in the shape of a trapezoid, which made them strong enough to support stones placed on top of them. In the town there remains some of the stonework and a drain for water to flow. And another Inca street with a drain down the middle. Here we go again, another market so the tourists can spend their money. The currency is the Nueva Sol, which means new sun. $1 is about 3.5 sols. The endless varieties of corn are prepared in many different ways. As you pass some houses, there will be a long pole with a red piece of cloth hanging on the end. This tells the passer-by that this is a chicheria, and they have a beverage called chicha for sale. The owner either grinds up sprouted corn or you can buy it in the market. It is then fermented for 3 days. Other ingredients are added, and the result is an off-white beverage like beer. You definitely have to acquire a taste for it. Our guide, Tomas, is holding a glass of this milky beverage. It is very popular with the Indians. This slightly fuzzy photo isn't any more fuzzy than this woman who couldn't remember how long she'd been there or how many glasses she had. We drove to a small Quichua village at 12,000 feet elevation to watch these women engaged in the traditional art of backstrap weaving. We had a detailed explanation of the weaving process, none of which I remember, except that it is painfully slow. However, they do produce goods of brilliant colors. The dyes they use are made from seeds, herbs, and vegetables. To obtain the color, the yarn is placed in a vat of boiling liquid with the appropriate seed or herb. Many Peruvian houses raise guinea pigs, which they roasted and served to us for lunch. It tasted a little like pork. Pork is better. This is doing the touristy thing. We boarded a train at Ollantaytambo to take us to the little town of Agua Caliente, which sits at the base of Machu Picchu. Never ever missing an opportunity to make a buck. The vendors sell their wares right on the railroad tracks and supposedly move when a train approaches. While waiting, a local train discharged its passengers, some of whom worked in town and others who were going trekking. On our train and with our guide, Tomas. The journey took about 2 hours. Tomas told us the train and the facilities at Machu Picchu were owned by the Orient Express. When we arrived at our destination, we got off the train and had to walk beside the tracks. Space is scarce, so the vendors set up shop on either side of the tracks. Now it's the tourist job to jump out of the way of the trains. Fortunately, the trains do blow their horns and everyone steps aside. Even this Peruvian hairless dog, also called an Inca hairless. They come in many colors. We paid a visit to an elementary classroom where we were entertained by the children. We noticed their school day seems to be shorter than ours. Educational opportunities have increased over the years, but there are still some 1 million children who do not attend school, particularly in the rural areas. The Urubamba River sits at the base of the mountain and flows through the town on its way to the Amazon. And up the mountain we are going. Machu Picchu is reputed to be the most popular tourist destination in all of South America. To reach Machu Picchu, which means ancient peak, involves a climb of 1,500 feet in a bus over a 7-mile gravel road with hairpin curves and no guardrails. It is at 8,000 feet elevation. Construction began in 1438 and continued for the next 100 years. About 300 people occupied some 200 buildings during its prime. Experts estimate that when the royal family, the priest, and their retinue visited, the population swelled to over 1,000 people. It was a site of spiritual and ceremonial significance. There was a sector set aside for the Inca royalty, an agricultural sector, an urban center for living and sacred places. It was occupied for about 100 years and then suddenly abandoned. No one knows why. Strangely enough, when the Spaniards arrived, they never discovered it. For almost 300 years it was covered by jungle growth until in 1911, a young American explorer named Hiram Bingham led an expedition into the valley in a search for the lost city of the Incas and found Machu Picchu. You can look down over the terraces to the Urubamba River 1,500 feet below. Some of the terracing was done to prevent the rains from eroding the soil. The assumption is that these terraces were for the use of the royal family. Perhaps corn was grown to make the ceremonial beer chicha. Flowers and herbs were grown for medicinal purposes. There are many terraces on and around the mountain, but most of the food was grown down next to the river. These houses were used for food storage and living quarters for the workers. The Incas also constructed an elaborate irrigation and flood control system, for you can imagine what heavy rains would do to a mountainside if there was no provision for this. They knew about earthquakes and built their windows and doors in a trapezoid shape, and they built their walls leaning slightly inward to make them sturdier. Note the heavy stone which rests on top of the door, and the fit of the stones. They cut the stones by using bronze knives, axe blades, small stones, and sand, which they rubbed against the stone they were working on to obtain a good fit. Can you imagine the patience it took to be this perfect at matching? One of the places is called the Temple of the Three Windows. Note the size of the stones which make up these windows. The only reason advanced for this obsession with high places is that it brought them closer to the sun. Thus we have a trail and stairs which go up to this mountain known as Picchu. And if you look on the left, near the top, you will see a building called the Temple of the Moon. Imagine moving stones up to there. This was probably a guardhouse because it is close to the beginning of the trail up Picchu. The Incas built a trail from Cusco all the way to Machu Picchu. It is a 5-day hike. It is a very popular trail for hikers who either hire a porter and camp out on the way or travel only a part of it. As you can see, this trail is not easy, and it was particularly difficult on the day we walked it in the rain. Unfortunately, it was just too steep a climb for us to reach the Temple of the Sun, a point hikers approach and then walk down from. This is the royal tomb, although no remains were ever found here. Note the curved white stone and how the gray stones were carved to fit around it. Well, here I am looking out of another window. This apparently was a sundial of sorts. The stone on top cast a shadow off the mountain, which the Incas then used to calculate the winter and summer solstice. Needless to say, this is a photographer's paradise. The last Inca site we visited was Sacsahuaman, which was a fortress outside of Cusco which overlooked the city. It's just amazing the size of the boulders the Incas put in place. The boulder behind our group has been estimated to weigh 130 tons. Always eager to pose for the camera for a little change, what better than a picture of an Indian woman with a lamb, a sheep, and spooling yarn on a spindle? Or, better yet, two ladies posing with their llama. Let's face it, the llama is the better looking. We were in Peru while campaigning for the election of local officials was taking place. There were posters of candidates everywhere. The primary way they campaign is by decorating vehicles with posters and portable PA systems and driving down the streets. Sometimes the candidates stop at places to speak. Voting in Peru is compulsory, and you pay a fine for not voting. Thus, turnouts of 85% are not unusual. They make it easy to vote, too. Since so many people can't read, the ballot has the picture of the candidate. All you have to do is put an X across the picture to vote for your favorite one. Although Peru is overwhelmingly Catholic, many of the Indians still practice some traditional folk medicine. This Andean medicine man, or shaman, mixed all sorts of Inca roots into a cloth and folded it up. Then each of us were asked to wish for something as he passed the cloth around our bodies. I still haven't won the lottery. And that was in sharp contrast to this large statue of Christ which overlooks Cusco. It was presented to the people of Cusco by Palestine refugees in 1949. But that's another story. We flew from Limo to Iquitos, a city of 400,000. It is an hour-and-a-half flight. Iquitos is on the Amazon River and only accessible by plane or boat. It is locked in by the jungle. There are no roads out of the city. It is the capital of the Andean jungle. 3/5 of Peru is jungle. We were greeted by a native band. And literally whisked from the airport to the river dock and boarded our boat for a 25-mile trip down the Amazon. The Amazon in places is a mile wide. Some 200,000 Indians live in the jungle. If you travel about 250 miles upstream, you will come to a fertile valley where coca shrubs grow. It is the coca leaves that the natives chew and which has some medicinal purposes. However, much of it is crushed by foot in chemicals, turned into a gummy paste, and flown to Colombia, where it is refined into a powder that becomes cocaine. It is $1.5 billion a year industry. Peruvian drug squads, with help from the U.S., are trying to stop production of it. 3 years ago, the drug squads shot down 40 small airplanes which were transporting the coca to Colombia. We headed up the Rio Napa River, a tributary of the Amazon, and ducked at our Explorama Lodge deep in the rainforest. Much to the distress of the natives, there are vast oil deposits in the rainforest being drilled. Shell and Mobil are also negotiating a $3 billion deal with the Peruvian government to explore natural gas deposits. Fortunate for us, but unfortunate for tourism, there were but 4 of us in our group and very few other tourists at the lodge. September 11th had taken its toll even down here. This was our dining room. The food was quite good. We had no electricity and no indoor plumbing and cold showers. We slept under mosquito netting, had a mirror and pan for washing our faces, and kerosene lamps for lighting. There was a nice area with hammocks where the old body could rest and listen to the birds. Late one afternoon, we boarded a small motorboat and went fishing for piranha. Our guide, Basilio, caught a piranha. He said stories about piranha attacking people is false, although no one ventured to go swimming in the warm water. I managed to snag a small catfish. We took them back to the lodge where they were prepared for eating. Basilio was a versatile guide who entertained us. We walked a little way from the lodge to visit the village of the Yagana Indians. Entire families were present. They spoke no English. The government does not help them very much. They are seen as a hindrance by the government, whose goal is to develop the Amazon. Their grass skirts are made from palm leaves. The protruded stomachs are the result of malnutrition. Peru has the highest infant mortality rate in Latin America. They make and use blowguns to kill small animals for food. The guns are about 6 feet long. They were very good at hitting this target, which was about 30 feet away. They are no dummies. There were all sorts of stalls where they sold their beadwork, bracelets, and yes, small blowguns. We saw little wildlife except for a few birds and butterflies. This is a trumpeter, and she added local color. There were beautiful flowers like these lilies. The weather was warm, but not overly hot or humid. This little rodent is a capybara, just a baby, but it purred like a kitten when petted. However, as an adult, he will be quite ferocious. We did spot these colorful macaws in a tree. On a rainy afternoon, we listened to a talk given by a local practitioner who told us about herbal medicines. There are some 100 species of plants they employ to cure just about everything because doctors are a rarity in the rainforest. In fact, the World Health Organization estimates that 75% of the world's population rely on plants in whole or in part for their medical needs. Strangely enough, there is a plant called cat's claw, which American pharmaceutical companies are researching, which might help people with cancer and AIDS. We docked one day in the middle of nowhere to visit a local medical clinic. Indians who are ill come here in their boats. There is a part-time American doctor named Leanna Smith. The clinic was built by the Rotarians. This was the operating room. In the room where dental work was performed was this refrigerator which held their medicines. To my surprise, there was an Optimus plaque affixed to the refrigerator. I was further amazed when I read it. A gift to Dr. Leanna Smith and the Yanamono Clinic for the people of the Amazon from Green Mountain Optimus Club, Lakewood, Colorado. The club no longer exists. You see very few people on the river, but once in a while a small boat passes. The Indian population decreased dramatically when the Spanish arrived because they brought all their diseases with them. We spent 3 nights in 2 primitive lodges. Once in a while on the Amazon, there appeared a ferry boat carrying local traffic and goods. Before we arrived at our last lodge, we were whisked off one boat and had a chance to ride in one of the tricycle taxis. Ours spurted and sputtered and barely made it to our destination. Wherever we weren't there long as we boarded another boat to our last lodge. This was more like it, a comfortable bed, hot showers, and electricity. This is a ceiba tree, which is 300 years old. Peru has many hardwood trees and exports lumber. Here is another colorful macaw. And roaming the grounds was this tapir, friendly fellow, but not exactly a house pet. We only saw a very small portion of Peru. So many people are poor, but they are fortunate to live in such a beautiful country of mountains, jungle, and desert. And Peru ranks as one of the world's great centers of ancient civilization. It's truly a place to visit again.